everybody, Keith again. I'm a wine geek. Chardonnay, beautiful, beautiful wine. One of the most popular white wines on the planet. Smooth, deep, concentrated acidity, tropical fruits, a little bit of citrus. There's so much going on in this varietal. Thing is, there's been a lot of animosity towards Chardonnay. It's had a long history. And right now, on the American market, I get a lot of people coming in going, oh, I don't really like Chardonnay. And it's understandable. A lot of things have gone wrong with Chardonnay. And its story is really interesting, and it comes full circle. Today, on the American market, we have amazing Chardonnays at our disposal. Chardonnays with wonderful characteristics, wonderful balance. We even have Chardonnays with no oak on it. A little bit of history first, and then I'm going to come full circle, and I'm going to talk about how this is all going to come together. Back in the day, when the Roman Empire defeated the Gauls in France, there was a Roman emperor named Probus. He came from Croatia. The Gauls were doing their thing. They're ruled now by the Romans. But Probus was a really cool emperor. He was a very forward-thinking dude. And what he said was he needed to make sure the people that he had under his control could still fuel their economies. So what he did is he went to Croatia and he brought a grape that's indigenous to his area. It's no longer around. It's really kind of a museum thing now. It's called Gouais Blanc. He brought Gouais Blanc, which is a white grape, to the Gauls in the northeastern part of France. And he gave it to them and said, this is how you're going to make your wine, this is what you're going to use to eat, this is your grape, this is what you will use, do with it what you wish. Now, around that area, on the slopes around where the Gouais Blanc was, the royalty, the nobility, not the royalty, it was the nobility, they were already growing Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is a 3,000-year-old varietal, we think. We've done some testing and they've found that maybe 3,000 years, give or take. So it was already there. Now what happened was, at some point, with Pinot Noir being up on the hill and Gouais Blanc being down in the valleys, at some point they cross-pollinated. And that cross-pollination, one of them, I'm sure there were many, produced a different varietal, a different grape. And that grape became Chardonnay. In that part of France, there are certain areas where Chardonnay did very well. And that's why Burgundy, when you drink red Burgundy, it's Pinot Noir. When you drink white Burgundy, it's pretty much Chardonnay. Now, fast forward way ahead to the 1950s, okay? This winemaker from California goes to Burgundy and falls in love with the way Chardonnay is made in that area. So he decides to emulate that exact process over in California. Sonoma, actually. It was Sonoma. The name of the winemaker, well, the name of the wine was Hensel Vineyards, is the name of the vineyards. And what he did was, he was the first person to import French oak to the United States. He brought French oak over, found land that was almost exactly like the land he found in Burgundy. It can never be the same, but the conditions were right. He did the same process. Nice low yields, the soil was just right, everything was right. And he made a Burgundy-style Chardonnay. People went crazy in California. They loved it. They fell in love with it. So what did they do? They decided to plant Chardonnay wherever they could because they wanted to do what he was doing. And in doing that, they planted Chardonnay in all the wrong areas. They planted Chardonnay in very hot areas. They planted Chardonnay in not so hot areas. They over-ripened the grape. They under-ripened the grape. They did all kinds of things because it was very popular to have Chardonnay in that style. And so that started, I guess, the downward spiral of Chardonnay. Because then, after the 1950s, and the 1960s, and the 1970s, you fast forward to the 1980s. And what we thought as Americans was good Chardonnay was the over-oaked, over-buttered, crazy, toasty stuff. And that's what we drank. Now, in the 1990s, we got kind of hip to the idea that maybe this wasn't the right way to enjoy Chardonnay. And in the late 90s, people started kind of falling out of love with the Chardonnay varietal because of what we had done to it. And then history keeps on going. And nowadays, where we're at is we are part of the internet generation. We have more access to wine than ever before. Not only wine, but we have access to wine information more than we've ever had before. So people are getting more hip to different kinds of wine. So we started to kind of not like that over-oaked, buttery nastiness that we all thought was bad Chardonnay. But it's not Chardonnay's fault. It's the way that Chardonnay was perceived, and the way it was conveyed, and the way it was sold, and the way we drank it, and then we started falling out of favor of it. Chardonnay, as a varietal, is beautiful. The thing about Chardonnay is it doesn't even need oak. This is a beautiful wine. It's full, it's complex, it has a wonderful, tight concentration of acidity. It's got a depth of fruit. This is, all these things that I'm talking about doesn't need oak exposure. But when you expose Chardonnay to oak, it's easily manipulated. There's a lot of things going on in this juice that allows us to make Chardonnay the way we want to make it. That's why oaking Chardonnay was so popular. Nowadays, what we're doing, not everybody, but what we're doing more often than we've ever had, is we're releasing Chardonnays onto the market with no oak on it, which is great. Because if you are somebody called an ABC, ABC is an acronym that's very popular in the wine world right now called Anything But Chardonnay. And that is a consequence of what we had to deal with in the past couple decades. So ABC people out there come into this wine shop and they're like, I don't want Chardonnay, because all they think about is the Chardonnay that we all know, is the nasty Chardonnay. But what I like to do is give them an unoaked Chardonnay. Go home, check it out, come back and let me know. And more often than not, when they come back, they're like, wow, that was a beautiful wine. It was round, it was full, it wasn't intense, it wasn't overwhelming, because Chardonnay is beautiful by itself. But when you put oak on Chardonnay, you have to be very careful. You have to oak it to the point that it doesn't lose its initial inherent characteristics. So I'm hoping that this is going to kind of give everybody an idea of where to go when you're shopping for a Chardonnay. When you go to your wine merchant and you want to get a white wine, ask them about unoaked Chardonnay. Get a bottle. They're not always inexpensive. They're sometimes a little more expensive. In California, real estate is high, so they charge a lot of money for California wines anyway. But if you get a unoaked Chardonnay and you enjoy it, then you can go back to your wine merchant and say, you know what, that unoaked Chardonnay was absolutely beautiful. Do you have a Chardonnay with a little bit of oak on it? And I bet you any money they're going to have one, because a lot of wine merchants these days will have different kinds of Chardonnays. Unoaked Chardonnays, Chardonnays that have a little bit of oak on them, and then the ones that we all know. So this is kind of an idea that I think we all should be practicing, because it's going to help us enjoy this beautiful varietal once again.